Pokemon cards.
I'm Greg Fife, former NTSB air safety.
Yeah, that's what do. I like the breakdown videos. These ones are too like they're trying to make it too much of a video out of it. I like when it's just informative enough that the guys they just kind of like full sentence like boom this and that. You get to the point. It's a long video.
Investigator. I'm here today to answer your questions from the internet. This is aviation accident support.
I'll watch one question actually. Fuck it.
Ill Deal Q asks, got my window seat. Anybody know where the safest spot is to sit on an airplane? The best place to sit is where you can access an exit. Over the wings or close proximity to either the forward exit or the rear exit. Count the seats between the exit in front of you and the exits behind you, because airplane crashes, unfortunately, don't occur where the airplane is upright. It could be upside down, it could be at night, it could be on fire. You may not be able to stand up, you may have to crawl. Knowing your position in relation to the closest exit is your best bet. Cora asks, what do pilots say to the passengers of a plane when it is crashing? Is it like in the movies, or is it completely different? One of the statements that you may hear is, ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation. We have a problem with the engine. It's under control. Don't worry about it. We're going to divert. That's a benign situation. In a catastrophic or at least a more dire or urgent situation, you may not hear from the flight crew at all. If anything, you may hear brace for impact, because impact with the ground is imminent. But you're not going to hear a long discussion from the flight crew because their priority is to try and prevent the accident.
Yeah, also, chat, imagine people know that they're gonna die, the things that they will do. Chat, in a survival, like it's always a situation, people might do the wildest shit, and maybe you could have escaped with a small margin. They might prevent that from happening because of the panic.
Monkey Shine asks, I am amazed that a flock of birds can bring a plane down. How can this be? The size of the bird is what really matters. There have been a number of events that have taken place over the years. The most recent one in history that a movie was made out of, called The Miracle on the Hudson, involving Captain Sully Sullenberger and First Officer Jeff Skiles. The airplane had just taken off out of LaGuardia Airport. They were climbing out and they ran through a flock of geese at about 3,000 feet. Unfortunately, those geese were sucked into the engine. With engines, they are built to withstand bird strikes to a certain extent. But when you look at a 20-pound goose, that's like throwing a bowling ball into the front end of an airplane at 200 or 300 miles an hour. The airplane then turned in.
Okay, let me try this. What about if there's a detector of gooses in the area, and in the rotor around the lid, a small device goes ping and puts a little net. Ping, net. And it diverts or catches the thing, and they don't go in the engine.
To a giant glider. The flight crew had to make a decision and put the airplane down in the water. There are other elements of bird strikes. One of the bird strike accidents that I investigated several years ago involved an aircraft that was going into Sioux Falls, South Dakota at night. And the pilots had forgotten one item on a checklist: windshield heat. Now the windows on an airplane, because it's pressurized, are very thick because it flies.
Okay, now Harvey was in a taxi in 5 minutes. Guys, I only have 5 minutes to tell you guys this before they send the taxi over. Okay, airplane front. Okay, this is the airplane. Okay, this is the wings. Okay, and then you have your rotors over here. Now hold on. You want the birds to start being sucked in. Easy clap. Okay, it detects a hazardous amount of birds coming in. Okay, bing. Something over here you put it at the bottom of the airplane, throws something, boom. It's like a net. Bang, boom. It blocks the thing from going inside of the thing. Okay, Chet doesn't like it then. That's okay. That was a bait idea. It was a bait. You fell for it, dumbass. Okay, in the thickness of the compartment over here. Okay. A small rod extends like this, right? Hold on. And it releases a small net or a metal, let's say, grid like that, so that the bird doesn't get sucked into it. Checkmate. Checkmate. Okay, so that didn't work. All good. Bing. Last idea. Holes around the rim. Holes around the rim that have a very strong titanium rod. When expelled, like knives, shling, like this. Shling, 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 shling. The bird can no longer go in. Shling, like that. Shling. Texas outside chat. That's all I had for today.
Flies at high altitude and the window gets cold soaked, we heat the windshields to temper the glass so that if something does strike it, it will not shatter. But that one missed item on a checklist put this flight crew in peril. This is a picture from inside the cockpit of a bird that was struck. It was a 2-pound duck, came through an 1.5-inch piece of glass. The remnants then struck the captain, almost killed him. The first officer had enough presence of mind, got on the flight controls, and actually successfully landed the airplane. I investigated a small general aviation accident where a very large bird, 22 pounds, actually came through the windscreen and struck both pilots, a flight instructor.
22-pound bird? Bro, is that a fucking flying pig? What?
And a student, killed both of them. We build aircraft to mitigate these kinds of dangers, but you can't build a bird-proof aircraft. NW-18.
Yes, you can. I just did it then. He's not watching my stream. I just did it. Shling like rods. I just did it.
Asks, during which flight stages do most aviation accidents occur? Takeoff and landing. We rarely have in-flight events at cruise altitude. Everything is working properly. The airplane's typically on autopilot. Takeoff, you're heavy, low, and slow. So those are the most critical time. You're putting the most strain on engines. And then, of course, landing. Even though you're lighter, you're approaching the ground. And so if there's any kind of weather event, wind shear, downdrafts, your margin of safety is decreased. If we're so close to the ground and we're not going that fast, are we going to survive, or do we have a better chance of survival? Yes, but you also have a better chance of survival even in flight. If you look at an airplane that was built in the 1940s or 1950s or 60s, today the airplanes are so much better as far as their structure. They have certain collapse zones. They have certain structures that break to absorb the energy. Seats
Tesla
are better
tower
on airplanes. They can withstand higher G loads than those accidents that occurred with older airplanes. Basic Baca, which accident investigation reports had the biggest impact on the industry or were the most controversial when they came out? The one that is probably the most controversial is Malaysian Air MH370, the airplane that disappeared over the South Indian Ocean. One of the reasons that I think MH370 has had such an impact is the fact that it's a mystery. There's 2,000 feet of silt on the bottom of the ocean floor there. If the airplane
is a suicide
into that 2,000 feet of silt, you will never see that aircraft because it's so deep. And in fact, the geography is like the Rocky Mountains. If it crashed into one of the crevasses in that mountainous terrain, it may look like the terrain. So any side scan sonar or any other technology may miss the aircraft.
Chad, I watched the thing about this flight. No? Chad, the flight had too many anomalies that had to be deliberate. It had to be suicide. There's so many things that had to be done deliberately for it to all be a coincidence. It's too many coincidences.
Craft. One other controversial accident is TWA 800. That was the aircraft that blew up off the coast of New York. There are a lot of conspiracy theorists out there that still think that that airplane was shot down rather than having a mechanical malfunction in the center fuel tank that ended up leading to an explosion. Kate Newens asks, where is Malaysia Airlines Flight 370? Where did it go? Will it ever be found? These are questions that keep me up at night. Where is Malaysia Airlines? It's in the middle of the South Indian Ocean on the bottom. Where did it go? 22,000 feet deep on the bottom of the South Indian Ocean. Will it ever be found? Possibly. These are the questions that keep a lot of people up at night because it's the mystery. This was an intentional act. This was not an accident. The airplane flew for 7 hours. It ended up in a place where it shouldn't have ended up. And the only way it could have gotten there is by a pilot or pilots who navigated the airplane to the South Indian Ocean. People have said, well, there was an in-flight fire. Well, there's no evidence to suggest that. And two, if there was an in-flight fire, the airplane wouldn't have been able to fly for 7 hours. Was there some sort of nefarious act where somebody got into the electronics bay and did something with all the navigation stuff, and of course the airplane is sitting on an island somewhere covered by jungle? No. You can't bury or hide a Boeing 777 very easily. There are a lot of other conspiracy theories. The most likely event was an intentional act. God is good for you asks, why do planes not have parachutes?
Crash investigator. I would assume the job looks kind of glamorous, probably really fucking boring, probably one of the most boring jobs of humankind, let's be honest.
Because it would cost weight. You couldn't build a parachute big enough to bring a 747 down. And as far as passengers being issued a parachute, one, you'd have to train them. Two, you'd never get out of an airplane. When would you use it? Given the fact that accidents happen during landing and takeoff, you're already close to the ground. Parachute wouldn't be of any value to you. Andrew Dixon, 8, asked the question, can planes land during thunderstorms? Yes, airplanes can land in thunderstorms to an extent. Pilots don't intentionally fly in thunderstorms. Occasionally, they will inadvertently encounter a thunderstorm. One of the accidents that I investigated, American Airlines 1420 at Little Rock, Arkansas, the pilots did, unfortunately, make a bad decision to try and fly into thunderstorm activity, landing the airplane at night. In this particular picture, the black line represents the initial flight path of the aircraft. You can see the red over the top of part of the airport. In aviation, we say red is dead. The aircraft started the hydroplane and unfortunately struck a very stout structure that ripped the airplane open and unfortunately resulted in 12 fatalities. We want to know
that's not even the thunder that killed it though. That's wetness.
What was going on with the flight crew. So we used the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder to really put the big picture together for investigators. The captain made this comment to the first officer as they were trying to find the airport. I hate droning around visually at night in weather without having some clue where I am. That comment in and of itself requires the pilots to abandon what they were doing because it's only going to get worse. And unfortunately, in this particular accident, it got worse. Almost Glow 3D asks, Denzel Washington saying, I was drunk on flight was diabolical. It was storyline. It was compelling. It was a parody.
On the morning of the accident,
I was drunk.
Yes, Denzel Washington was a spectacular pilot. He was able, even in a drunk state, to roll the airplane inverted and save the day. But in real life, that would never happen. While there are issues that we see today in commercial and in private aviation regarding substance abuse, the system itself will trapline those pilots or crew members that have access to the flight controls. Those pilots would never see the cockpit and never put that airplane into the same position that Denzel Washington did. So the best place to enjoy that kind of storyline is at the movies. M. Dizzy 16 asks, what happens if a window on a plane cracks? Does everybody die?
Now,
if
pressure
you're at
drops,
low altitude,
things
the
drop,
aircraft
boom.
will depressurize, but it won't be a catastrophic explosion or decompression. If you're at high altitude, 35,000 feet, there will be a lot of debris, and unfortunately, we've had people that were sucked out of the aircraft. That change in pressure is what causes the vacuum or things to then get sucked out of the aircraft till the pressure equalizes. If you're strapped in, you will survive. Nugget Palooza asks, is anyone familiar enough with the Sully case that knows if the NTSB was out to get Sullenberger in real life as they appear in the movie?
No, that is.
Asks, the probability of being killed in an airplane accident is 1 in... It's
360 million.
11 million. Aviation is the safest
I was
form
gonna
of
close.
transportation, bar none, around the world. Your chances of getting struck by lightning are greater. Definitely, your chances of getting killed in an automobile accident are greater. We have more train accidents, bus accidents, pedestrian accidents. You have a higher probability of getting hurt or killed riding your bicycle.
Yeah, but what are your chances of being in an automobile accident when you're a very, very high-skilled ace at the wheel driver? Hold on a minute now.
Crossing the street than being involved in a fatal airplane accident. Mind of Rob asks, what if snakes on a plane really happened? If they really happened, put your feet up on the seat and don't piss off the snake. Minukami.
He's in it. Guys, my dad, I swear, guys, my dad drives every day for a long time. Never been in an accident never had a scratch on his car ever in his entire life.
Asks,
not
do you
not a
have
scratch.
any tips or advice for someone who has aerophobia? Yes, relax. One of the things that we say in aviation is time to spare, go by air. You have to have patience, because if you don't have patience, your anxiety level increases. The biggest and best thing I think that passengers can do is familiarize yourself with the noises. When the airplane takes off, you hear all this clunking sound. That's the landing gear being retracted. If you look out the window, you see parts of the wing move. Those are the flaps. Those are designed to not only increase lift during slow speeds like the takeoff, but also increase.
Even though the smaller planes, chat, they do.
Drag
These always put me off. It always put me off.
Think about, oh my gosh, the wings are going to break off, which they won't. Think about the fun part of it, that yes, it feels like a roller coaster. The bottom fell out. I've sat with people who, I mean, they're white knuckle on the seat. I explain all the noises. I try to educate them to the basics of aviation. And once they understand that, it doesn't make them feel so bad.
Also, the jets, some of them are older, okay, and some of them don't have good stabilizers, and that shit, brother, it rocks like crazy. It's the scariest thing in the world.
Asks, 4 a.m. thoughts. First off, what are you doing up at 4 a.m.? Wouldn't all planes landing be controlled crashes? You could look at it that way. Yes, you are controlling that weight, you are controlling the energy with the thrust of the engines, and of course the controls.
One more question.
The good thing is, the airplane isn't damaged, and you get to taxi to the terminal. Jiggy Jigs asks, any of y'all remember ValueJet Flight 592? I remember it because I was the investigator in charge, and I used this particular accident in a lot of the safety presentations I do worldwide. There was a radio call shortly after departure by the pilot.
592, contact Miami Center 13245. 592 days I need to return to Miami. What kind of problem are you having? Smoke in the cabin.
They had smoke in the cockpit, smoke in the cabin. That right there gave us an indication that we had possibly an in-flight fire. In the meantime, we were looking at the aircraft in the Florida Everglades. We were really going to depend on the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. One question by one investigator changed the entire course of the investigation in 30 seconds. What are oxygen canisters? In aviation, we typically use oxygen bottles. They're typically painted green. This is the remnants of what we started to find of these 144 oxygen canisters. We knew that they had been exposed to fire. This final picture is the key. This is an exemplar oxygen generator. There is a 32 caliber percussion cap, and it starts an exothermic reaction. When you ship these, you need to have a plastic cap to prevent inadvertent firing. None of these oxygen generators had that protective cap. The fact that there was a 2-cent cap that was not put on cost the lives of 110 people. Quora asks, what does an airplane crash investigator look for apart from the black box? As investigators, we're constantly looking for the best available evidence, physical evidence. That is the aircraft wreckage itself. We're going to examine the propeller. We're going to look at the engine. We're going to look for damage. Was there an in-flight breakup? Was there a structural failure? We want to know if there was a fault in the computer or the software that may have caused or contributed to the accident. A very famous issue that came up early on with Airbus was the fact that the computers on their Airbus airplanes would go to sleep in flight. Airbus had to fix that problem. We use meteorologists to study the environment if there's a weather accident.
If you're an investigator of airplanes, your tie should be a plane with the little windows on the sides, boom, little tail at the back.
A lot of aircraft accidents now are being captured on video. This Ring doorbell video shows the moment right before impact of a general aviation aircraft, a single-engine Mooney, where the wings actually broke in flight. Part of the tail section is missing. This is the cockpit section of a Gulfstream business jet that unfortunately crashed on takeoff. There was a post-crash fire, but there's still valuable evidence for investigators. You can look at handle positions. Here's the flap handle right here. Here's trim. These are the control yokes. That gives us an understanding of whether or not they properly configured the airplane for takeoff. One of the other tools that we use as investigators is taking information that we know into a simulator. We try to recreate based on factual data. Did the pilots have options? Could they have recognized the situation with the aircraft before it got out of control? Blackwell 110 asks, what does the flight data recorder telemetry technical...
All right, enough. I'm not bored. I sure enough. So yeah,